Coming at number 9 now, we have Shanti Devi. She was born in India in 1926, and when she was 4 years old, she told her parents that her real home was in Mathura, 145 kilometers away, and that was where her husband lives. She told her teacher that she had died 10 days after giving birth to a child. Her teacher noticed she also spoke like someone from Mathura. Then she said her husband's name was Kedar Nath. The teacher found a man by that name in Mathura. He had lost his wife 9 years ago, 10 days after she gave birth to their son. Her name was Lugdi Devi, the same surname. Kedar came to meet Shanti and pretended to be his own brother, but Shanti instantly recognized him. A full report on the case was ordered by Mahatma Gandhi himself, and they found it to be all true. At number 8 now, we have Ryan. This boy from the Midwest claimed that he was Marty Martin, a movie extra who became a Hollywood agent. He pointed to him in a picture and said that was him. His parents were skeptical because Ryan said he had traveled the world on big boats, danced on Broadway, and had a big house with a swimming pool. That didn't really sound like the life of a film extra, but they were amazed to find that it was all true. He was a dancer on Broadway, he then moved to LA to work as an agent and had a big house with a pool. Alright, at number 7 now, we have Cameron McCauley. When he was 2 years old, this boy from Glasgow started talking about life on Barra, a remote island off the coast of Scotland to which Cameron had never been before. For 3 years, all he seemed to talk about was his Barra home, his friends and his family there. He said his dad was called Shane Robertson, he was killed by a car, and he missed his mum so badly he was in genuine distress. His parents finally decided to take him to Barra. A documentary crew joined them. They were amazed by how many things Cameron got right. It was the tiny details, everything from his dog's breed, the colour of his house, even the view from the window. If you're interested to hear more on this, the full documentary is actually on YouTube. Alright, at the number 5 spot now, we have Hunter. This was the name given to a 3-year-old boy who claimed he was the reincarnation of legendary golfer Bobby Jones. He pointed at him in a picture and said, "That's me," and then did the same thing with a photo of Bobby Jones's childhood home, and he said it was his own home. The details that Hunter remembered might have just been a coincidence, but there was one other thing. Hunter was insanely good at golf. By the age of 7, he had won 41 out of 50 junior tournaments, including 21 in a row. Now, is it a coincidence that a golfing child prodigy claims they were the reincarnation of an actual legendary golfer? I don't know. What do you guys think?
In our 9th spot, we have the bad man. And if you guys are liking this video so far, then make sure to give it a big thumbs up because it really helps us out. This next story was shared by a man named Halar. According to him, his cousin remembers his past life. In fact, he had some pretty creepy dark things to say about it. He said that he was once a man named Ghazi, but he died after some bad guy cut off his fingers one by one. Then he got run over by a jeep. After that, he was reborn into the man he is today. I mean, that's a pretty terrifying thing to remember if you ask me. Starting off this countdown, we have Sylvester Stallone. According to famous actor Sylvester Stallone, he remembers 4 of his past lives. Yes, 4. Him and his mother are super believers in reincarnation. His mother, Jacqueline, also claims to be a psychic and astrologer. In one of Stallone's past lives, he remembers being a soldier in the French Revolution. In fact, he believes he died after losing his head. According to him, he was reading about that time period. Someone was like, "Ow, the guillotine, that must hurt." And he replied with, "Oh no, it doesn't hurt. You don't feel anything, except your head hit the basket." How would he know that? So that's when he knew that he was once a victim of the guillotine. Not only that, but he believes he was actually once a boxer in his past life and was killed by a knockout punch. And he also believes that he was once a Guatemalan monkey. So, yeah, pretty crazy. In our 9th spot, we have Stevie Nicks. Fleetwood Mac singer Stevie Nicks believes that she was a monk in her past life. In a 1982 interview, she said, and I quote, "I think I spent a lot of time in old churches, like a monk. I am very comfortable around that kind of music, with that kind of creeping around, with being very quiet." Not only that, but she also believes she was beheaded in another one of her past lives. Currently, she has difficulties holding up her head and has a weak neck. She thinks this is because in her past life, she was beheaded. In another interview, she said, and I quote, "See, I think you live on Earth a certain number of times until you finish what it is that you were meant to do here. And then you go on. I don't think I'll be back. I think I am done." So you heard it here. Stevie Nicks thinks that she won't be reincarnated again. She feels satisfied with her life. Coming in at number 8, we have Keith Urban. This one is quite funny, not gonna lie. But Keith Urban believes that he was a court jester in his past life during the Middle Ages in Germany. That's pretty much all I could find on this. It was posted on a reincarnation forum, but I wasn't actually able to find the interview where Keith himself said this. But in a way, it's fascinating. Like, he was a performer in his past life, and now he's a performer now. Pretty cool, if you ask me. In our 7th spot, we have Kate Beckinsale. During an interview on The Late Show with David Letterman to promote the movie Underworld Awakening, Kate said some pretty interesting things. In the interview, she said that for weeks she was having Vietnam flashbacks. Letterman asked, "Were you ever in Vietnam?" And she said, "I feel like I was." That's all that was said, but a webpage called the Reincarnation Forum took this literally, as if she was having visions of her past life in Vietnam. They went on to point out that the United States military actions in Vietnam lasted until 1973. Kate Beckinsale was born in 1973. So could it be that she is the reincarnation of a Vietnam casualty? Coming in at number 6, we have Steven Seagal. In the Buddhist community, Steven Seagal is believed to be the reincarnation of the 17th century translator and teacher Taran Chungdrag Dorg. According to Seagal, from the age of 7, he knew something was up. In fact, he said he has the power of astral projection. He spent some time in Japan, and while there, he learned who he was in his past life. Proclaimed Tibetan spiritual leader Penor Rinpoche said he recognized Stephen as Chungdrag Dorg. In fact, Stephen could identify all of his old possessions. But a lot of people are skeptical. They think that Stephen bribed this man to make such claims. But honestly, who really knows? We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with Patrick Swayze. When Patrick Swayze was alive, he believed that he and his wife were lovers in a past life. He truly believed that he knew her from before. Then in another interview, he revealed that he used to have reoccurring memories of being a warrior and passing away at battle. Not only that, while he was in the UK for several months, he told an interviewer, and I quote, "Oh my God, London, I love this city and feel as if I was in a past life an Englishman." So for sure, Patrick was open to the idea of reincarnation and might have been reincarnated multiple times. Moving on to number 4, we have Miley Cyrus. Now this one is a little bit on the weirder side, but Miley Cyrus said that she was Lil' Kim in a past life. Only thing is that Lil' Kim is still alive, and that's not exactly how reincarnation works. But in an interview, Miley told Billboard magazine, and I quote, "In my past life, I feel like that was me. I feel like Lil' Kim is who I am on the inside. She just makes me happy. I just love her, and I can't help that I love her." Not only that, in one of Miley's older songs, she makes several references to reincarnation. She said, and I quote, "I've got a way of knowing when something is right. I feel like I must have known you in another life, because I felt this deep connection when you looked in my eyes. Now I can't wait to see you again." The line, "I can't wait to see you again," can be interpreted as "see you again in another life." Whoever that song was about, Miley feels like she has known them from before in her past life. In our 3rd spot, we have Lady Gaga. Lady Gaga believes that she is the reincarnation of her aunt, Joanne Germanotta, who passed away at a very young age from lupus. Lady Gaga said that she never met her aunt, but she always felt this deep connection to her. Not only that, but her family all say she looks incredibly similar to her aunt. She believes that her aunt has some unfinished business on Earth, so that's why she was reincarnated as Gaga. She told Daily Star UK, and I quote, "I believe that I had a reincarnation and believe that you can be reborn over and over again. I believe I was my father's sister, and her spirit is with me. I believe I am her reincarnation." Also, let me know in the comments below, do you believe in reincarnation? Moving on to number 2, we have John Lennon. John Lennon remembers being 2 different famous figures in society. He believes that he was Jesus Christ and Napoleon. In 1968, Lennon called a meeting with his bandmates to tell them he believed he is the reincarnation of Jesus Christ. I mean, he was high as a kite at the time, but even when he sobered up, he still felt like Jesus. In the Ballad of John and Yoko, he makes reference to Christ and crucifixion. Not only that, but in Lennon's biography, The Lives of John Lennon, author Albert Goldman said John thought he and Yoko were lovers in their past lives as well, saying he was once a pharaoh and her a queen in ancient Egypt. Not only that, but Lennon thought he was Napoleon and Yoko Josephine, Napoleon's lover. He truly believed that they were together in several different past lives. Like, how romantic is that? Seriously, that's so cute. In our number 1 spot, we have Tina Turner. In 1977, Tina Turner visited a psychic that told her that she once lived in ancient Egypt in her past life. Since then, Turner has convinced herself that she was once the pharaoh Hatshepsut from 15th century BC. Since then, she feels a deep connection to Egypt. She spends her holidays there and everything. In an interview, Tina said, and I quote, "That strange feeling of recognition became very strong when I was in Egypt at excavations and saw images of Amenhotep, a pharaoh from the 18th dynasty. Something strange happened to me. I knew that I was one of the portrayed figures, that I had lived there in that time." That's kind of cool. Like, imagine being a pharaoh in your past life, and then you're reborn and you're a freaking famous singer. That's amazing. In our 6th spot, we have James Leyinger. James was born in 1998, and ever since he was 2, he talked about being a lieutenant that passed away when his plane was shot down. At first, his parents brushed off their son's claim, saying that he just had a wild imagination. I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't know of any kids that know the word lieutenant at that age. But anyways, eventually they were forced to believe that their son was telling the truth, because his nightmares about this plane crash got really bad. When they researched into this plane crash, they found that there was an American pilot named Lieutenant James Houston Jr., who passed away in 1945 towards the end of World War II. Now, the lieutenant story was a perfect match to the one that James was sharing. First off, what are the odds that he gets reincarnated and his parents literally pick the same name? His parents then met Lieutenant James's crew, who were old, but they confirmed the details that little James mentioned, saying that they were all accurate, and only the lieutenant and the crew could have known that. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the soldier. This story was shared by Reddit user Thorny Dame. One night she had a vivid dream about being a male soldier in a war. The dream ended when she got shot in the leg. In fact, she woke up in immense pain. Her leg was throbbing. When she pulled up her pants to see if her leg was okay, she discovered a birthmark there that she had never seen before. The birthmark was in the exact place where she had been shot in the dream. So this woman believes that she was a male soldier in her past life, who passed away while on duty. Moving on to number 4, we have the Great Aunt. Okay, buckle your seatbelts, because this one is quite crazy. So this was shared on Reddit by the user CPAZ Grayvoodle. When she was in junior high, she came downstairs one morning and shared a weird dream that she had. The dream was that she had a baby and kept it in a shoebox. She thought it was just a random crazy dream, but according to her mom, that's what her relatives did to her great aunt. I know, it's so messed up, but let me explain. So her great aunt was born in 1905 and was a premature baby. Apparently her parents kept her in a shoebox in the gas oven. The oven was not on, okay? Only the light was on. It was basically like a DIY incubator. She passed away in her 50s from cancer. But get this. Over the years, this woman shared more and more similarities with her great aunt. She would go to her grandparents' house and say like, "Ooh, I like this." Turns out everything that she liked was her great aunt's. Then one time she went to a family gathering and old acquaintances of her great aunt were there. As she entered the living room, she saw this old lady and immediately had a hate on for her. She had no clue who she was or why she felt so negative about her. Well, it turns out that that woman had an affair with her great aunt's husband while she was sick of cancer. So this girl believes that she is the reincarnation of her great aunt. Coming in at number 3, we have Frozen. This next story was shared by a man named Paul V. For the longest time, Paul was certain that he knew the way he was going to pass away. And that's because he kept having reoccurring dreams where he would freeze to death. In the dreams, he saw himself laying in the snow, frozen, and then he saw his soul rise out of his body. After experiencing this dream for a number of times, he realized that it wasn't a prediction for the way that he was going to die, but it was a memory from his past life. He realized that this had already happened to him, and that's how his past life ended. Pretty spooky if you ask me. Moving on to number 2, we have Virginia Woolf. Okay, this next story fascinates me. So this woman's daughter might have been famous writer Virginia Woolf in her past life. So when she was 12, she would have dreams about being underwater and seeing faces underwater. Not only that, but one day she just started talking about Virginia Woolf, and she knew so much information about her. Well, when they looked her up, the day that she had the dream about being underwater was the anniversary of Virginia Woolf's death by drowning. Well, you know, that's freaky. Not only that, but Virginia Woolf and the daughter are prolific writers and both bisexual. So it may just be that her daughter is Virginia Woolf reincarnated.
Alright, at number 10 now we have Sam Taylor. To put it quite simply, Sam Taylor claimed to be the reincarnation of his own granddad. When he was a year and a half old, as his father changed his diaper, he looked up at him and said, "When I was your age, I used to change your diapers." As he got older, he came out with more things that made his parents think he was the reincarnation of his grandfather. He would talk about how his sister had been murdered and how his wife used to make milkshakes for him near the end of his life. This was all true. He even identified his granddad in a school picture from when he was 16 and said, "That's me." Cool. That's also a bit creepy. And so's this. At number 9 now we have Suzanne Ghanem. This story takes place in Lebanon. 10 days before Suzanne was born, a woman called Hanan Mansour had died after a failed heart surgery. She had always said she was going to be reincarnated and have lots to say about her previous life. She had tried to call her daughter Layla before the heart operation but couldn't get through to her. Just before Suzanne was born, her mother had a dream that a woman came to her and kissed her saying, "I am going to come to you." When Suzanne was 16 months old, she would take the phone and say, "Hello, Layla," over and over again. Later, Suzanne explained that Layla was one of her children and that her real name was Hassan. She said her head was still small and to wait until it's bigger, then she might be able to tell them more. When she met Hassan's family, she named every single one of them and knew details only Hassan would have known. She still called Hassan's husband when she was 25 just to see how he was. Alright, at number 8 now we have Titu Singh. When he was 2.5 years old, this boy from India told his family about his other life in Agra, a city in the north. He said his real name was Suresh Verma. He had a wife called Uma and 2 children and owned a TV and radio shop. He said he had been shot, cremated, and his ashes thrown in the river. He said he was homesick to go back. His brother visited the city and found a TV and radio shop ran by a widow called Uma. It was called Suresh Radio, owned by Suresh Verma, who had been shot. When Uma visited Titu, he asked her how the children were doing and shocked her by talking about their very specific family memories. Perhaps the most shocking thing of all though was Titu's birthmark, a round indented shape in the exact same spot where the bullet killed Suresh Verma. Coming at number 7 now we have PM. This story comes from a case study where the child was referred to as PM. PM was a boy whose half brother had died from an illness 12 years before he was born. That boy limped, he had a fracture on his left tibia, he had an operation above his right ear and had chemotherapy through his external jugular. He died at 2 years old, blind in his left eye. When PM was born, he had 3 birthmarks matching exactly where his brother's illness had affected him. He had a swelling above his right ear, a mark on his neck, and corneal leucoma, which caused him to be blind in his left eye. He also had a limp, and he told his parents he wanted to return to the old family home even though he had never been there before, and he described it with perfect accuracy. Wow. Okay, at number 6 now we have Daniel Jurdi. First, let's talk about Rashid Kadej. He was a mechanic from Fermatar in Lebanon. He died in 1968 in a car crash at a military beach at the age of 25. His friend Ibrahim was driving. A year later, Daniel Jurdi was born. His first word was Ibrahim. At the age of 2, he told his mother he wanted to go home. Then he said, "This is not my house, you are not my mother, my father died." My father's name was Naeem. Naeem was the name of Rashid's father. At the age of 3, Daniel's family passed the military beach where Rashid had died. He started crying, he covered his eyes and said, "This is where I died." A psychiatrist who heard this story arranged a meeting between the two families. Daniel recognized Rashid's sister and called her by name. He did the same thing with his friend Ibrahim. The family accepted Daniel as their son from a previous life and he would visit them every month and stay with them. Alright, at number 5 now we have Luke Ruhlman. At 2 years old, Luke started talking about Pam. His mum had no idea who Pam was, so she asked him. Luke said he used to be Pam, a girl with black hair who traveled in Chicago. He said, I died and went up to heaven and saw God, who eventually pushed me back down. When I woke up, I was a baby and you named me Luke. The mother asked how Pam died and Luke said, in a fire. Luke's mother searched online and found that a Chicago fire in 1993 had killed 19 people, including a woman called Pam Robinson. Alright, at number 4 now, we have a girl called Kendra Carter. Kendra began swimming lessons when she was 4 years old and attached herself immediately to her swimming coach. She told her mother that the coach's baby had died when she was sick and she pushed the baby out. Her mother asked her how she knew this and Kendra said, I'm the baby that was in her tummy. She then described the abortion. Her mother found out that the coach did have an abortion 9 years before. The girl started to get closer to the coach and the mother let her stay with her 3 nights a week until she fell out with her. Kendra then became depressed and didn't speak for 4 months until her mother let her see the coach again. Coming in at number 3 now, we have Taranjeet Singh. At 6 years old, this boy from India claimed that he had been a person called Satnam Singh. This boy lived in another village which he described in detail and Taranjeet knew his father's name. He said he had been killed while riding his bike home from school and had died from head injuries. He recognized Satnam's families and all the objects in their home. But here's the real creepy thing. A forensic scientist took samples of Taranjeet's handwriting and compared it to Satnam's handwriting. He found them to be identical. Some people say that your handwriting is almost as unique as your fingerprints and it's incredibly difficult to convincingly fake it. At number 2 now we have the twins. Dor Ai-Fu and Dor Sapai were 2 sisters from Burmese who died in their old age in the early 1960s. They were both Buddhists who believed in reincarnation. 2 years after their death, twin sisters were born 4 kilometers away called Ma Nyunt Nyunt San and Ma San San Nyunt. When they were 3 or 4 years old, their mother jokingly asked them where they came from. They said from the coca tree. They didn't exist nearby. Then one day someone mentioned the name of one of the sisters' sons. The girls said he should not be allowed to visit because he was a gambler and spent all their property. The twins said they came from the same town as the women. There were coca trees there. They said they put up water stands for travelers in that life. That's something the women did. At age 5 they remembered their own names and when they were shown a photograph they both pointed to a separate sister and said that was them. The evidence kept building up even more, but for many people it's the physical similarities that are all they need to be convinced. And finally at number 1 now we have Joey Verwey. When this girl was 3 years old, she started recalling details of her past lives. That's right, not life, lives. 10 of them, in fact. She said her first life was as a cave dweller millions of years ago. She led researchers to the caves, the same ones actually where the first Australopithecus were found, also known as the missing link. She then described her other lives, a slave in ancient Egypt with details of the slave ships and how she built stone roads there. In another life, she wore a veil on her face and saw an elephant carrying a princess. In another one, she was a persecuted Christian under the Roman Emperor Nero's reign. She said she may have even met Saint Peter. Finally, she remembered growing up in South Africa as the grandchild of President Paul Kruger. She said she had 10 children. Researchers found that one of them was still alive and in her 90s. When Joey was 5, she met the daughter, who said Joey reminded her of her mother. The two then talked for hours about their past life together.
Very long. Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have the Reddit story. This story comes from Reddit user NextGuitar2992, and they were replying to a post asking if anybody remembers being on the Titanic in a past life. They replied with, quote, maybe? I'm one who's on the fence about past lives and such, but I don't know about this. I'm obsessed with the Titanic and I asked my mom as a joke if I maybe reincarnated from it, and she said without hesitation, yes you are. Which got me thinking. I knew about the Titanic before I could even speak. She says that even as a 1-year-old I was drawing the ship as best as I could and drawn to the ship. The first time I saw A Night to Remember and the Titanic 1997, the sinking scenes just felt off. Even the breakup in the 97 movie, I said, that's not right. Mind you, I was around 4 to 6 when I saw it, and I was right. The sinking scenes in both movies are said to be inaccurate. I've always known the fourth funnel was for decoration when no one else around me knew. I've always had an obsession with the second class areas. I've always hated water, literally for no reason. I just hate it and I don't know why. Same goes for cold. I can't handle anything under 45 degrees or I'll have a panic attack. Again, I don't know why, it just happens. I've always been looking up facts and such about the Titanic, and when I look up the lost ladies, I had a major anxiety attack. Never happened before when I was reading things about other survivors and victims. And lastly, I've always had an obsession with the Titanic and its stories, and I still do. Could just be coincidence, but sometimes I wonder. In our number 9 spot today we have Jessica Brooks. Jessica is an accomplished violinist with a profound connection to a tragic chapter in maritime history because she firmly believes that she had a past life on the Titanic, not as a passenger, but as a member of the ship's orchestra, playing music that echoed through the grand halls of the doomed vessel. Her claim is supported by an uncanny and detailed knowledge of the Titanic's musical repertoire, despite having never studied it in her current life. Even more compelling is her unusual affinity towards the hymn Nearer My God to Thee. This hymn is notably significant as it's widely spread to have been the last song played by the Titanic's band as the ship succumbed to the icy waters of the North Atlantic. This strong emotional connection to the hymn and her vivid past life memories make Brooks' case exceptionally compelling. In our number 8 spot today we have Lucinda Green. Lucinda is a woman with an uncanny and heart-wrenching connection to the Titanic. Green's ties to the ship trace back to her childhood when, long before she learned about the ill-fated vessel, she would draw detailed images of a large ship colliding with an iceberg. This peculiar fixation turned out to be the tip of the iceberg of her mysterious link to the Titanic. As Green grew older, she began to express detailed memories of a past life. She insisted that she had been Mary, a nanny aboard the Titanic tasked with the care of 2 young children. Her recollections were far from rosy nostalgia. She described the deafening chaos of the ship sinking, the shrieks of metal, the panicked cries of passengers, the chilling sound of wailing. Most distressingly, she remembers being helplessly separated from her charges amidst the confusion, a memory that brought her great distress. What makes Green's story all the more captivating is its corroboration by historical facts. Records from the Titanic reveal that there was indeed a nanny named Mary aboard the ship who tragically lost those under her care. This astonishing alignment between Green's memories and documented history lends considerable weight to her claims. In our number 7 spot today we have the birthday connection. This past life story comes from a Reddit user called lowstick6746, and they wrote about how their initial Titanic connection comes from the fact that their birthday falls on April 18th, the day when the Titanic survivors reached New York. However, her connection to the ill-fated ship remains elusive, confined to dreams of witnessing its construction and fleeting glimpses of elegant, well-dressed individuals from a distance. These encounters evoke a sense of observing a higher social class without being a part of it, leaving her with a feeling of detachment. A cruise she embarked on shortly after the release of the Titanic film proved to be an eventful journey. Amidst the challenges of rough seas, a peculiar incident occurred. One evening after dinner, she strolled along an exterior promenade and a distinct familiarity overcame her. The chilly air, the sound of her shoes on the deck, everything seemed eerily recognizable. Looking down, she caught a glimpse of her shoes and the wet decking, triggering a sense of deja vu. Her mind connected the dots, recalling that her shoes were once black, much like her dress in that dream. It was an odd realization since she had never owned a black dress in her waking life. Despite her strong affinity for the Titanic, she lacks any fascination or interest in other ships, leading her to question the extent of her involvement. In our number 6 spot today we have William Barnes. In his early childhood, William Barnes exhibited signs that hinted at a connection to the ill-fated Titanic in a past life. At the tender age of 4, he astounded his parents by drawing a ship with 4 smokestacks and declaring, "This is my ship, but she died." Curiously, he insisted on being called Tommy and spoke of siblings, aunts, uncles, and brothers who were unknown to his parents, as well as troubling nightmares that plagued his sleep. Years later, at the age of 25, having relocated to Washington, D.C., William sought the guidance of a counselor proficient in hypnosis. During one session, he engaged in a fervent debate about the ship's design while under a trance, and upon emerging, he declared with certainty, "My name is Tommy Andrews." This marked the first time that he had uttered the complete name. At 38, after embarking on a new marriage and moving to Arizona, William startled his wife, Marianne, during a restless night's sleep, passionately arguing and uttering unfamiliar names with a very distinct accent. Ultimately, these strange occurrences affected his life so much, and finally in 1997 he was referred to Dr. Frank Baranowski, a psychologist renowned for employing hypnotic age regression to aid individuals in overcoming phobias. Initially skeptical, William approached the regression sessions with doubt, convinced that they would be futile. However, to his astonishment, the therapy proved effective for him. The sessions were meticulously recorded and later released, and in the recordings, listeners can hear William speaking as Tommy Andrews with his distinctive Irish accent, recounting the harrowing events of the Titanic sinking and reliving his own tragic demise on the ship's deck. In our number 5 spot today, we have Bess Waldo Daniels. This story comes from someone who uses the online username Bessie A, and they wrote about how they firmly believe that their past life was intertwined with the tragic tale of the Titanic. Recounting their memories as Bess Waldo Daniels, the validation of their past existence as Bess stems from an intriguing discovery. Photographs of her husband and children bear an uncanny resemblance to the images that once flashed through their mind. They have distinct memories from this life that go all the way back to childhood, memories of their sister, their parents, and even later memories as well, ones that include their past life husband, Hud. Curiously, their memories skip the moments of meeting and marrying Hudson. Instead, they recall the births of both their children, Helen and Hutsy. While their memories encompass the Titanic, they admit gaps concerning the journey from Canada to England and their activities in England. Their recollections resume within their stateroom, basking in the sunlight streaming through the porthole. On the night of the sinking, Hudson briefly disappears, but upon his return he leads everyone to the boat deck, cautioning against using the elevators and urging the stairs instead. Though their memories fail to bridge the gap between reaching the boat deck and the subsequent events, a serene atmosphere pervades their recollection. People converse calmly in groups, interrupted only by the arrival of a tall man with a brown beard, whose words escape their memory but stir a feeling of discomfort within them. Turning their attention to Hudson, they observe a profound change in his demeanor, as if life itself drains from his being. Suddenly, they find themselves in a boat surrounded by fearful and anxious individuals. A scared-looking woman with distinct cheekbones sits next to them, while another refined lady, very English, occupies a nearby seat. Amid the chaotic scene, they cry out but cannot recall their exact words. Waiting at a nearby boat, 2 officers, identifiable by their uniforms and hats, accompany them, but suddenly, as if the ship vanishes beneath their feet, the man loses grip and they descend into the ocean depths. The original post explains that they had to cut out so many of the details that they can remember, and I also had to cut out details that they did include for the sake of this video, so it's very clear that this person has a ton of memories of this past life. In our number 4 spot today, we have the Grand Staircase. This post came from the Reddit user called Vish Trinity, and they titled their post, "I am sure I died in the Titanic." They continued on to write, "I was 6 when my mother told me about a ship named the Titanic that sank in 1912, and that's when I started getting dreams where I could see the vast deck, the ballroom, the famous Grand Staircase. I would also get dreams about floating in the ice-cold water, seeing the huge ship break in two, and a lot of things. This was a year before the movie came out. Also, let me tell you, my mother never told me how the ship sank or about the interiors of the ship, as in the ballroom, deck, etc. When the movie came out, it was like deja vu for me. All the scenes felt like I had been there and experienced it before. So I'm sure I was on the Titanic and died in the ice-cold water on that fateful night in a past incarnation." In our number 3 spot today, we have the Titanic memory. This story comes from Reddit user Commodore Comac, and they wrote in the past lives thread, and they said, quote, "I appreciate the fact that there are many more people who claim to have been on the Titanic in a past life than could have possibly been on the ship, but when I was 11 years old, I had the clearest dream that I have ever had, and that includes the subsequent 3 decades of my life. I'm standing on the deck of the ship, I'm in a heavy fur coat, and my gloved hands are holding on to a wooden rail. Overhead is a night sky filled with stars, but no moon. 4 funnels stretch above me. There is the sizzle of white rockets racing towards the stars. The ship is sinking by the bow. There is darkness and water. I die. A year later, I read the book A Night to Remember. Then I learned about the sinking of the Titanic, a ship with 4 funnels. Sank by the bow on a clear night. Fired distress rockets. Not enough lifeboats. Logical explanation? Easy. Overheard a story, saw something on the television, happened to have a dream about a ship and just happened to get some facts right. But it didn't feel like a dream then, and it still doesn't." In our number 2 spot today, we have Mark Robert Hopkins. This person posted online with their story, and they wrote, quote, "They're not as much memories as familiar sensations, really. The distant sound of violin music playing, the feeling of plush carpet beneath me, the flickering of wall sconces, the cramped feeling of slowly working my way up a stairwell with many others, a slanting deck, a vast black wall of metal rising up along one side, the biting cold air, the sound of metal grinding and booming sounds sounds popping in the darkness, the feeling of aloneness and desperation of being isolated in a lifeboat in a vast body of water at night miles from anywhere. It all seems so familiar, and this was even before I began learning about the Titanic. As a matter of fact, the curiosity behind it drew me into the Titanic. As for who, definitely not someone important. Somehow the identity of a 10, 12, or 14-year-old boy stands out to me, first or second class with the last name O something, as in O'Brien for example, although I don't remember there having been any O'Briens in first or second class. The sensations are vivid, not cohesive. It's like they're latent or submerged in trying to put themselves together and come to the surface, like pieces of very old memories. Others I know are supportive of this and agree with the possibility that I just may have been on the Titanic. Finally, in our number 1 spot today, we have Robert Ballard. Renowned oceanographer Robert Ballard carved a unique place for himself in history when he discovered the wreckage of the ill-fated RMS Titanic in 1985. But the intriguing aspect of Ballard's connection to the Titanic extends beyond his historical discovery. Throughout his life, Ballard was fueled by a deep, inexplicable connection to the Titanic, an uncanny bond that was pivotal in his relentless pursuit of the ship's final resting place. Some paranormal researchers have contemplated on the nature of this very extraordinary connection. They posit that Ballard may have had a past life association with the Titanic, suggesting that his intense drive to find the ship was more than a mere professional ambition or a personal obsession. Could it be that he was subconsciously attempting to unravel the threads of his own past? A past that was tragically intertwined with the Titanic's ill-fated voyage?
Starting this list off, in at number 10, the Battle of Iwo Jima. James Lee Ninger was born in 1998, and when he was just 2 years old, he pointed to a picture of Iwo Jima in the Pacific, and he told his parents that where his plane was shot down, and he kept telling them that he was a lieutenant in World War II. His parents were pretty shocked by this, and they decided to do some digging on their own. They discovered that only one plane was shot down in that location, and it belonged to the American pilot Lieutenant James Houston Jr., who was killed by the Japanese in 1945 at the end of World War II. The little boy even said that his ship was called the Natoma, and he would have constant nightmares about the crash, and he would yell things like airplane crashed and on fire in his sleep. His parents met with Lieutenant James's crew, and they all confirmed that every detail that this little boy was saying was actually 100% accurate. And guys, say it with me right now, is this real life right now? Moving things right along, and at number 8 we have the Hollywood actor. This next story is actually pretty creepy, well, because there are so many similarities with this one. A kid used to have memories about being a Hollywood actor who turned into an agent. He said that he was born in 1903 and he had so many vivid memories of a past life. He said that he had been in movies and worked for an agency. He saw the world on a big boat, and he had a large house with a swimming pool. He kept going on about specific details about this past life, and one day he pointed to the TV and said, "Hey, that's me." His parents did a ton of background checks, and as it turns out, everything that this little boy said was true. The man in the movie was named Marty Martin, and he used to be a Hollywood star who danced on Broadway, but then he went to work for an agency company, and he went to Europe on the Queen Mary. And guess what? He had fancy cars, a big house with a swimming pool, a ton of other details that this kid said. It actually matched up perfectly with this guy's life. If this is true, then this is actually super impressive, and I get pretty creeped out thinking about it, because I actually think this kid lived a past life. A pro golfer takes us to number 4. Bobby Jones was a professional golfer from the 1920s who unfortunately died from a spinal disease. But in 2016, a 3-year-old boy claimed to be this professional golfer. The little boy's father showed him 6 pictures of famous golfers from the 1920s and asked him to identify which was the picture of him in, his past life. Well, he immediately pointed to the picture of himself, of Bobby Jones, and he said that was him. He also pointed to another picture and said, "This is my friend Harry Garden," and as it turns out, that was a picture of famous golfer Harry Garden. Through research, scientists say that children who remember their past lives have about a 9% chance of having skills related to their previous life. So for this little boy, he went on to win 41 out of 50 junior golf tournaments by the age of 7 years old. So I don't know, is this a little bit cheating? Because you've played golf for a very long time. The strange story about a teacher takes us to number 2. When a little boy from Thailand was 3 years old, he started telling his parents stories about he used to be a teacher named Abu Kai, and he was when he was riding his bike to school. He begged his family to take him to his old village, and finally his grandmother took him. Once they got off the bus, he led her straight to a house where an old couple lived. They were the parents of Bu Kai, who was a teacher who had been killed while on his bike. I mean, what makes this story even more bizarre is that this little boy was born with birthmarks in the exact same place where this teacher was shot. I mean, coincidence? You know what? I'll let you guys be the judge.